You are listening to Strength Over All, a weightlifting podcast. Thank you for checking out Strength Over All, episode 22. This is Rob flying solo today, but luckily have Dr. Andy Galpin with us, who is a professor in the Center of Sports Performance at California State University in Fullerton, and also has a Ph.D. in human bioenergetics. So thank you so much for being on the show today.
Hey, lucky to be here, man. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, I have a ton of questions, like I told you, that we had people submit, so we might as well just go ahead and get right into it. But first, actually, why don't you kind of give a little bit of your background and what led to you getting into all of this and getting, I guess I should say, getting so deep into it.
Sure. Well, I have, like you mentioned, my doctorate in human bioenergetics, which is kind of a fancy way of saying muscle physiology, muscle performance physiology, really, with exercise and biochemistry. So it's sciencey, it's molecular, it's cellular, but it's performance-based stuff. So that's the issue. And I got into that because I had gotten my master's degree in human movement sciences. And along the way, I've just been an athlete my whole life. I played every sport you can imagine. I grew up in a very small rural country town where, the kids that I grew up with, we played everything. So I did that and played football into college. Wanted to continue on with my athletic career from there, so got into weightlifting, the competitive sport, otherwise known as Olympic weightlifting. And then from there, actually transversed to combat sports, jiu-jitsu, and MMA and kickboxing and things like that. So I've done a wider range or a wide array of different athletic events. So as I was going along, I was a perfect combination in high school and in college of good enough of an athlete to be incentivized to want to keep going, but not so good where it didn't matter. So for me, it was twofold. It was sort of like I need to know everything so I can optimize my training and recovery and nutrition and everything, because if I don't, I might not stay on the field.
Right, yeah.
And in addition, it was just curiosity. I'm like, man, I really like this stuff, and if I like learning, I like education. I'm just someone who's fortunate like that, who I didn't understand it, and I still don't understand when people say I don't like school. I'm like, what? Like, I don't understand that at all.
Yeah.
But I was probably just fortunate by having inspirational educators in my background and people that cared and entertained. So I just like learning, man. I like knowledge, and I'm like, well, if I'm going to learn, I might as well learn about the body and performance and muscle. And so that's kind of what got me in the whole shebang.
Awesome. Yeah, it's funny. Like, I tell people all the time that I kind of wish I could do school again now. Like now that I realize how much I care, I wish it was almost like I could just start over.
Well, what's interesting about that is when there's been some projects I've worked on in the past with people, and they haven't really panned out, but we're working on something again, and it's really an education kind of activity that we're trying to put together for the general public. And our model is going to be effectively that. It's sort of like, we're going to skip straight to application. We're going to skip right to performance. And then at the end, or 2 or 3 years later, then we'll come back and teach you anatomy. We'll come back and teach you exercise phys. Because once you've done it for a few years, that's where you really start to care, because you understand the context so much more. So I was fortunate because by the time I got to my undergraduate degree, I had already started working out and I had already played sports. So I had that context. I was already bought. Like, I was sold on why you needed to know this stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I don't think you're unique. Without a question, my best students are the ones that are either coming from the military or that are coming back to school.
Yeah.
Not even close. Those are my best students.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's I think that's some good insight that you have, because I didn't really care until I started coaching people, and then I was like, man. Now I'm like buying textbooks for fun, Like,
yep, exactly.
Yeah.
I always say this is a good. If any of you guys out there, girls, are listening, and you're still in school or in college or something, one thing that I regret is I wish I would have saved everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't sell your textbook back for $13. Like you're not gonna.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be worth it. Keep all of your class notes, and I promise you, the class that you're taking right now that you hate, that you think is stupid, and you'll never use it in 5 years, in 10 years, like somewhere down the road, you're gonna look back and be like, oh my God, I wish I would have had that book now. Like
Yeah.
I wish I would have kept those notes. So you don't know what you're gonna need to know until you know it, and then you realize, I wish I would have it. So. Just be patient with that stuff.
Awesome. Okay, so yeah, we can kind of get into some specific stuff. Like I'd like to keep the majority of it pretty, Olympic weightlifting specific. But I think to do that, we got to cover some bases first. So let's start off with, just a general. What is a fast twitch versus a slow twitch muscle, and what are the differences?
Sure. Well, we've all heard that term. So. And in fact, the term itself is a bit deceptive because there's not really fast twitch muscle or slow twitch muscle. There are muscle fibers that are fast and slow. So what that means is every single one of us have fast twitch and every one of us have slow twitch. And we all have different amounts in different muscles. So for example, your quadriceps. Most people, and if we're talking the average of humans, 7 billion of us, most people have about half of the fibers in their quad are fast twitch and half of them are slow twitch. So, okay. But some of us are 80% fast twitch and some of us are 80% slow twitch. So we have an extreme array of plasticity or difference between individuals in that same muscle group. And if we compare that to something like the soleus, which is that real small muscle right behind the lower part of your calf, the soleus is almost 80% slow twitch in almost all humans. And compare that to the bigger calf muscle, the one that sticks out when you flex your calf and it pops out to the medial side, the middle part of your thing, that's your gastroc. That's much more fast twitch in almost all people. And so what we're really looking at when we find an athlete, when we find a CJ Cummings, when we find a Kendrick Ferris, that like they probably have just more of those fibers. They're not fast twitch and they're not entirely different from you. They just have probably more of them.
Okay, so which lends itself to, I guess, the more explosive movements found in Olympic weightlifting.
Yeah, in theory. So this is one of the interesting things. We know that that's fairly true. People that have more fast twitch fibers, what that probably determines most, honestly, is directly in the name itself. So what fast twitch refers to is how fast your fiber twitches or contracts. So what I mean by that is fiber type probably determines speed more than anything else. This is why you could have a really, say, elite powerlifter who's extremely strong and they're way faster than most people, but they're not fast compared to a weightlifter. They might not have a lot more fast twitch fibers because, again, how they might be producing force is by having more total fibers or having bigger fibers or a different function of the fiber, because twitch is really going to determine speed. So in a sport like weightlifting, yeah, that might be a huge part of it because we have to be strong, and fast is such a massive component to getting under the bar. Right. Unfortunately, we've really never actually biopsied weightlifters, so we don't know.
Yeah. Okay, so is there a way that someone can tell, if they are more dominantly fast twitch, slow twitch, or pretty even, or anything like that? Or is there a way that like a coach can screen an athlete, to find out that kind of a thing?
The honest answer is no. That's the quick answer.
Okay.
You can't. What I can say is there are some commercially available and fairly cheap genetic testing companies that are available. So these things are, you can pay, $200 or something. You spit in a cup. 10 weeks later, they come back and tell you, hey, you have the genes that code for fast twitch fibers. So you're much more likely to have more of them. But that doesn't necessarily mean you have them. And while that's really cool and insightful, it is fairly limited right now. It's going to get better. And as we spend more time and as more people buy them and we can expand that, it will get better. But for now, about the best I can do is simply say, hey, you have this gene or this polymorphism, this anomaly in this gene that allows you to produce more of these fast twitch fibers. than others, but we all have the genes to produce all of them. It's just a matter of if we code them or not.
Right. Okay. And by code them, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so whether or not your genes actually decide to build that protein that it has the ability to build.
Okay. And is that something that happens like in like human development from like, being a child or through training?
It's both. It's absolutely both. A certain portion of that's going to be determined by, the genetic code you have. So if you're much more likely to program them, you're going to build more of them. But a huge portion of that is based on your training.
Okay.
So you're never going to take somebody like me who is, I competed, I qualified for national championships a few times, got there. I'm never going to compete with Ferris.
Right.
I mean, there's no way, right? But had I not done my 10 years of training, I wouldn't have even got close to the level I was at. So we all have a spectrum that we play within, but our individual spectrum is much bigger than people think it is. So you have a much, much greater ability to change your fiber composition than you think, but that doesn't mean you're going to go from horrible athlete, got cut in every sport in high school, to Olympic champion. Like, that's not going to happen.
Right, yeah.
But you can get a lot better. You can get way better than probably most of us even realize.
Right, yeah. Well, yeah, and it's funny because I always use myself as an example for that when we have new people in the gym that seem like they're really struggling. Is like I like fill the stereotype of I didn't do shit when I was a kid. My parents kind of put me into every sport, but it's like I played baseball, I got hit in the head by a pitch like 3 times, and so they didn't make me play baseball anymore. Like, I was okay at basketball, I guess, but I didn't really enjoy it. I just like to go skateboard with my friends. And so, I didn't really have like a very athletic or active childhood because my parents kind of took the role of like, they didn't necessarily care about sports too much. So they're like, well, if you want to play sports, that's cool, but if you don't want to, we're not going to like necessarily force you to go do whatever. So I think I got into, strength training or a performance-based, lifestyle in my 20s and like my early 20s. And, it's not to say that like you can't get a lot better because I've gotten significantly better from my early 20s to my late 20s. But, I always have that mindset of like, man, what if my parents had just been like, no, you're going to keep playing basketball or no, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it could have helped, but, the thing is that, you're not – time's not up yet. Like, you still have that chance. People do not peak or end their ability to change just because they turn 30.
Yeah.
You got a long time to change. Yeah. You don't lose plasticity until you're 80, 90 years old.
Yeah. Well, and I think that 30 mark is huge for so many people. Like, we had a dude in here who I think he might listen to this, so I won't say his name, but I'm definitely calling him out, that he came in on his 30th birthday and did a CrossFit class in our gym, and he was like, dude, I'm telling you, man, it's just not the same. I can already tell a difference. I'm like, all right, come on, man. Like, you probably just had a shitty night's sleep. Like, that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've done these studies before, and other folks have done more of them than I have. But we've seen equal rates of increase in performance with people in their 70s as people in their 20s.
Yeah.
So that's one other thing too with aging is you do not lose plasticity. You do not lose the ability to adapt with training. What typically happens is people just stop training.
Right.
So like you don't lose at 30. Get out of here.
Yeah.
I mean, I won't mention a name either, but this is a consultation with an extremely high level female CrossFitter. And, the conversation came up. She's like, well, I'm starting to feel like the age, etc. And she's like 26.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, she's like, you got forever, ever to go. Like, you're fine.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, even like, I think historically speaking, and now I don't know exactly how much science is behind this other than just like observational data. Or I should say, I guess I don't know how much research is behind this past observational data. But I think, they say most female performance-based athletes don't really peak until their low 30s, or that seems to be the case.
Yeah, it just depends on the sport. What it looks like, and of course there's a ton of aberrations out there, but it appears at the global scale that endurance-based sports seem to peak a little bit later in life. Mm-hmm. Power speed sports, you seem to peak a little bit earlier.
Okay.
Now, CrossFit, of course, is one example of throwing that into the equation, but I think what the deal with that is the volume is so high, you have to be young to be able to not just get crushed.
Right. Okay. Now you say like you can adapt to training, up to being very elderly. But
Mm-hmm.
what about the effect of volume?
What do you mean?
I mean, like what you just said. Like, I mean, I'm assuming your inference was like a 20-year-old, and this is like common knowledge.